Hi, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well and trying to keep as safe as possible in these times. It's really a key. It really helps to have a balanced way of looking at things. And one of the balanced ways of looking at things is keeping safe, keeping healthy. I have a couple of questions here. One thing for sure, if you don't mind me, I thank you, everybody, for sending questions in. We're a little dry at this particular time. And I asked for questions basically because I'd rather be talking about things that you think um, you'd like to hear a little bit, just another option about other than the ones you already have, perhaps. Or maybe not, depending on the circumstances. There's a couple of questions here from Christina in Ottawa. And they're complicated in the sense that the answer may not be exactly how we normally think of engaging with life as a whole. And so I'll just talk about the questions. She says, my question is whether we have to actually feel the energy that is working in us and going through us to be helpful to others and to know that we are growing. Is it important to feel that we are growing in order to grow? Okay, decent questions. The other one is, could you clarify for me, how will I know when my reality is real and not one driven by the personality? And how will the change look like so that I can identify it? So I'd like to try to approach these questions from a particular perspective. And those of you who know me know that I'll probably be talking about these questions from an energy perspective. So it's a reality that we all have personalities. And it's like an engagement with a cycle of stages that we are all a part of. And in our first stages of life, we cultivate from the time we're born attitudes, opinions, virtual ways of living and acting. We watch movies, we listen to our parents, their friends, we watch life, we look at our peers. We're always engaging with other people, perhaps. And we make up our minds about what we think we need to be like. In fact, the truth is, most of the time we don't make up our minds. Most of the time we are reflexive. There's a reflex internally that allows us and sometimes doesn't allow us to act out in certain manners. We have emotions that are profoundly strong. And of course, these are, in effect, sensory systems. Our emotions give us feedback related to the territory around us, but based on biases that we've cultivated, in all honesty, for the purpose of survival. None of this sounds extraordinary, and it isn't. But of course, we live in a form that considers itself, because it's self-focused, because it needs to be to cultivate a form. This form, of course, we call our personality. And has an abundance of ideas, an abundance of emotions that reflexively respond to life. Now, some of these emotions are based on literally when we're 3, 10, 15, 18, 20, I don't care what age. All of these yearly engagements with life as we're growing, and the ones later on as well, are incorporate a form, make up a form uh, rather reflexively and actually judgmentally. We're constructed to assess, one could say, so that we can make sense of things. Yet it's an emotional bias, it's an emotional sense of things. All that emotion is energy, all of it. How we make sense of things is based on how we've been, I was going to say set up, but I don't quite mean it like that. How we nurture ourselves and engage with ourselves internally and perhaps externally to allow ourselves to find some relative, what we call relative balance in there. Whatever that balance is, it may not be balanced at all, but it's our balance. It's our way of seeing the world. And we have a proviso within the defensive construct that dictates to us all the time. And that proviso is if we have the idea, then it's valued as ours. If we consider that we should be like this or like that, then that is valued as ours, our view, our way of engaging. 8 billion people, maybe plus by now, or less, all engage exactly the same way. On the weekend, this Saturday, I'd like to talk about a question from Pat Donahue that relates basically to the astral forms. And the dilemma is that this orientation of engagement with life on these planes relate to a persona or personality, a series of personas, different way of acting, that would relate directly to how we believe the value of us should be considered, even though we pay absolutely very little attention to the same thing that may be occurring in another. In effect, we can elevate or devalue another based on what we believe they should be like. And they are shifting and changing all the time. And at the same time, trying to keep themselves relatively the same so that they can be recognized by others and recognized by themselves, perhaps one could say. So it is an energy orientation. So what does that mean? That means we are emitting energy off our system all the time. I haven't even talked about the chakras yet, but the energy operates from other states through this step-down transformer-like orientation, one could say, into these planes so we can learn how to function in these planes first stage, learn how to do that. But we actually fall in love with what we're doing and how we're doing it, why we're doing it, and this version or versus another version, because the assessment or judgment level is so strong because it's part of an honest defensive system that helps us to survive on these planes, no matter what it looks like. No matter what it looks like, doesn't matter. The emissions from us through these centers or chakras or sephiroth or fireballs, whatever you want to call them, through this form comes in relative to what we can handle in our personalities on our day-to-day. All right. There we go. This is, one could say, the construction of the first stage. The first stage has many levels. We all have personalities, whatever they look like. Doesn't matter what they look like, we all have them. Now, many have tried to tell us that the ultimate focus in this first stage is to be able to understand others and to understand ourselves. Focus off of judging others, negating others, and trying to understand that others are growing internally and externally the only way they, at this stage, know how to do that. Well, our listening to that is very biased, legitimately, because, once again, we grow through us. We don't grow through somebody else. Not entirely true, actually. We can grow by watching other people and learning from them how that method works or doesn't work. We've done that since we started. We look and see if someone is acting in a certain way that gives us a sense of being important. Then we start to act that way. I remember very clearly coming out of a movie. Oh my God, I don't know how, maybe I was 10 or 11 or 12. And I went to the old Imperial Theater in Ottawa, which is no longer in existence. And it became a concert hall of some kind for a while. But I came out of a double movie with cartoons and all. And it was a movie that related to, it was a wartime movie. So the propaganda was, well, people should join in the war because more people were needed to fight the war. You know, that kind of came out of the 40s. And I felt as if I was this person, Ronald Reagan, if you can imagine, operated this plane in the war. I don't understand why I did what I did. But when I did that, I realized I'm not acting like me. I'm acting like I think Ronald Reagan would act as an important pilot in that war. It spooked me just a bit. But I realized that if I go to these movies, and I did often, I think my parents wanted to get rid of me and have some time on their own. But I didn't have any trouble doing that in those days. It was a long time ago. But I realized that we copy what we see, or we can have an insight into, didn't quite use those kinds of words. If I did that with that Mr. Reagan in that one movie, then I wondered if I did that with anybody else. That was a shock to me. I think that was 1947. I think it was around 10. And it bothered me. So I take this question home and I asked one of my parents about it, and they said, oh, well, people do that all the time. And I realized that they do. And they still do at age, whatever age you are. The trouble is that we take that little piece of energy that happened way back in when you're 15 or 14. You keep it with you in a small little box, the box of life. You draw it up into a timeline of now. You open the box. Out pops how you should be acting under a set of circumstances, and you act that way. And nobody talks like this. Thank God. Well, maybe they should. And that person maybe should be us individually, not necessarily talking to other people, but at least talking to ourselves. It's not to be negated. It's more to be recognized. Now, that conscious piece of awareness there, even in such a thing as a biased personality, probably all of us may have a few biases, one could say. In that little piece of bias, that energy is transmitting outward. And it has a kind of maintenance. If you use your biases, that means it's safe for other people to use their biases. That piece of awareness of you using that bias holds you for a few seconds. No, I'm not talking about negation here. I'm talking about recognition here. There's a big difference between the two. And you as an adult, me as an adult, if we could possibly see that small little piece, would then begin to have energy that's moving through us, transmit conscious awareness of that bias. I know I'm taking this, but seemingly an incidental piece of material. But that bias itself is a promoter of conscious awareness, not unconscious reflexive judgment. Meaning, you're now aware and you're transmitting awareness, and it's okay for you to be aware of what's going on inside you. And you're not attempting to be disrespectful to you. You're attempting to understand you. The other way is you have this bias, and that bias promotes the protection of it. Therefore, the protection of it is transmitted so that others are linking in with protecting their own biases. Much like an argument going on, I suppose, with another. And you are arguing for one thing and they're arguing for another. And there's an impasse. Not because you're both not right, but because you're neglecting to hear or listen to the energy and how it's affecting you from the other. And you're holding on to your bias because you're not willing to be interested in the idea that another is expressing. And they're not interested in your idea because the protection of roughly in the age-old construct of a personality begins early at 3 and 2 and 4 and 10 and 15 and whatever. And it continues on and gets more acutely capable of declaring the importance, not of even of its version, because it could be in any subject whatsoever, but its position that relates directly to the need to be valued, the need to be defended, the need to be a valued participant in the bias of each and every one of us as an individual. If you look for these things, you can see them. They're not negative. These are survival techniques involved with the first stage of development of a personality's engagement, which may take a whole life, by the way. There's no negation with that. It sometimes does. Helps us to understand our relationship with what we are. We are a being of consciousness. Christina's question then asks, can that be helpful even if no awareness is there? The answer is yes. Because as you notice your relationship with you as you, the idea may touch you that others may be similar. 8 billion people, come on. Is there any possible chance? The actual question, the answer is no, of course. But the truth is, yes, not perfectly aligned, but there is an alignment within the learning curve of all beings who are alive, who are engaged with existence related to these planes. Now, I'm talking about this planet, this planet. Are other planets possibly with life? I can't help but say yes with that one. But nonetheless, what I'm saying is, in our first stage of engagement, we're in a movement towards attempting to understand our relationship with our engagement with our day-to-day for the purpose of becoming involved more with the second stage. And they overlap. The overlapping begins to recognize that if you are more consciously aware, there are other subtleties you begin to be aware of. First of all, most of us have cultivated, with all due respect to everybody, a recognition of our bodies, our intensity, perhaps, maybe not, and the way we think, perhaps some of our biases, and at the same time, the biases of others, they come easier, which we may or may not agree with. Our ideas, we have found, are not perfect. Sometimes we disagree with the ideas we had 10 years ago. And in that case, there are a number of clues that we can use on ourselves. Our ideas, our form, goes along with some of Marie Jose's questions, who we may or may not get to. This form that we have is always in a movement forward, broadening, perhaps you could use a better word, into a recognition of a reality that coexists with the one that we already are in. And the word coexists is important. You've heard me talk about this before. We are capable of perceiving energy that we use every day to express ourselves with in whatever which way each individual decides that expression should occur. There's no disrespect to it. If you were listening to a very able being, I'm sure they would say that that universality is there all the time. Not just as a theory. This is second stage now. First stage, theories abound. Concepts, we need to test our concepts to make sure that they're right. First stage, vital. The inquiry into the nature of man, humanity, the universe, life itself. The same queries. Relative answers consistently remain there based on the numbers of people who believe they're true. And they are repeated over and over and over again. None of them negative. Yeah, we come up with some negativity towards all of them, depending on what version you believe things should be like. Second stage would say, am I perceiving energy that is in me all the time? When you notice, when you're engaging with life, that there is a flow somehow that you could perceive on the body, inside your being, your emotions, or in this space up here that we call mind or brain. Actually, if you practice that exercise that I give credit to the Buddhists for, when you are trying to be aware inside this physical form as if there's nothing in there, paying no attention to any of the organs or anything at all in there, you begin to notice that you're also paying attention off the body as well as inside the body. You may even begin to notice that there is energy or pressures touching you from off the body, and they appear to be in the body. Well, they're in the body as well. And we call them chakras, etc., whatever. Without experiencing that, this is just an idea. The act of recognition and perception changes the transmissional process in the form somewhat, beginning of second stage. You begin to perceive that which is flowing through you and gives you life. You will perceive it relative to how you act out in life, because it is being used unknown to you, by you, to engage with life in the way that you think or believe you should be engaging, or in the way your reflexes respond automatically when you're out of control with them. When you get hungry, you can eat until you're not hungry. If you're charged emotionally, internally, that eating continues past the capacity of your stomach, and it stretches your stomach. Same is true when you notice that that's happening and you pull back a little bit and still take enough sustenance to be okay, and it shrinks your stomach. I can speak from experience with this one very well, and I have no problem doing that. The recognition of that reality, though, is a conscious awareness of the world of ideas and expression involved in the first stage. Second stage is becoming aware of it and being okay. Being okay, but moving the best you can. This isn't so simple. Back into a place where you do not have to reflexively, from older stages, engage in a manner that will be out of control. This is so easy to talk about, not as easy to live, along with as many ideas as you come up with relating to living in a perfect manner, because you don't live that way. You live in a manner related to how you have constructed a system currently following those reflexes. Not reflexes is not, they're not a, that's not a bad word. Those are practiced engagements with life appropriate at the time that they hooked into you or you hooked into them to help you to survive in life. No negation at all. So the question is, when awareness begins to slowly be your experience, because that's the bottom line, you're slowly becoming involved with the experience ever so slightly, intermittently at first, because you need time to get used to the observation, the willingness to be okay with you as you are broadening, and less focused on being important for your broadening because you're in a process of development. So you don't want to get hooked on early stages. Yeah, sure. That's an empty statement. Most of us are hooked on early stages in our personality, although we would not want to be considered that kind of a person. Well, we grow through us, and those higher states engage with us 24/7 from the time we were born. Active flow, use of that flow reflexively to engage with and cultivate a form that can live and function on these level planes, the coarser planes. In the meantime, slowly we begin to, through steps of kind of an abstract willingness. And what I mean by that is a letting go. That we would be okay to go beyond what we believed was the apex of our capacity. We would be willing to grow beyond what we have succeeded in doing or not succeeded in doing. Success is really not the key, but it is in our stage. What is the key is a willingness to engage with states broader and higher than the ones we believe exists. Wow, that is a statement that nobody wants to hear. You heard what I said, what we believe exists. That's scary. And you don't have to agree with it. Agreement isn't the point. The question is, as we are more consciously aware of that flow, will that help others? Yes, it will. In what way? It will help them to become more conscious because the emanation that's operating through us as energy beings, we are energy beings, then we'll touch them in a place where they do not currently have awareness. And that is all relative to them and their ability to be okay in those particular places where they're touched. That's not our call. It wouldn't be anybody's call. That's a call from a higher state. So, Ron, do you believe in higher states? Absolutely. There isn't any doubt about it for me. No question. The dilemma is we still hold dearly onto the idea that chances are there's probably nothing beyond us when we're elegant in our thinking, balanced in our emotional disposition, and quite healthy and structurally able in our physical bodies. And we have a perfect personality. We kind of edge it right there, slow it all down. And we have others who have told us in our culture that this might be the way to think. But you don't have to agree. First of all, you don't have to agree with yourself. You can move to find something beyond whatever you think. And you don't have to agree with others. There's no rule. There are no rules. You may be considered odd for thinking the way you think, but you'll continue to grow in the way that you're attempting to grow. This conscious awareness is one aspect of growth. If you are not conscious very, very much, can you help others grow? Absolutely. You are working in you, through you, trying to understand you better. That will help others. It's noted, strangely enough, in odd ways, if you're really trying to understand you. And I don't mean elevate you or put you down. I'm talking about in the middle there, understanding you. It's recognized that you will automatically move towards trying to understand others because the practice of attempting to understand you helps you to begin to try to understand others. Keep one thing in mind. You're not living in their shoes. You won't get it perfect. Your biases may tell you that you're right, but they're biases. There's no negation in your biases. They're just perspectives, options. And sometimes you might even be close. Other times, you're the only one who thinks you're close. Learning about that helps others to understand that it's safe for them to search within themselves as well and to make mistakes with others, not necessarily being perfect about the interpretation of others. Without that, you will be thinking you're totally right about everything that you see and do. Or you will put yourself down in a hole and it's not real. We can live in any of those places and it's very uncomfortable. And we can attempt to broaden out our willingness to go beyond what we believe has to be true because we believed it for 50, 60, 30 years, 20. It's harder in the younger years sometimes because you take what you think you know from university, from school, from your experience, and that becomes real. So your view of things is the only view. Later, you find out that that may not be true if you have experience and life with dealing with others, so many, and you begin to be okay with engaging with that second stage. Perception of that energy, little as it may be, enables you to move forward in a conscious way, attempting to be conscious of energy moving in you. Eventually, even if it's just a little bit of energy moving in you, if you try in your meditations to be aware of that energy softening down so that you can let yourself release some of the biases that you may have just for a few minutes, you may notice energy in you and focus on that and engage with something related to higher states. Yes, could be a prayer, could be a mantra. It could be anything that you believe, could be an image, could be an experience. Engage with it and see if you can link into or engage with an image that you believe in, as much as some people don't believe that that would be helpful. And I agree to some extent, but if you agree with focusing on an image, it will really be helpful up to an engagement with that image. And then eventually you must move forward. But you will have a response from another state related to that image. I'll talk more about this on Saturday, related to the astral plane. So it is true that conscious awareness of that flow will help others. It really is true. Help them to become more conscious. But if you're not fully conscious of that flow, or not even a little bit conscious of that flow, and you're still working through your relationship with you, the fact that you're doing that will be helpful to another. It's an idea. Ideas are fascinating. If you think of the mind or the brain as a perceiver of a field of ideas, a field of consciousness, maybe that's an easier way to look at it. The mind itself will be affected by an idea. Or an idea, one could say, will happen to be in your mind that you never had there before. Now, it may have penetrated into that awareness of yours based on a transmission or a movement of force related to the mind or that space in here, the brain, and you perceive it. You're perceiving that which is coming up into your mind, one could say, or into your mind. Then what you do with that, and we have SCADS material that happened up there, is You can agree or disagree with it. You can accept it or not. You don't have to agree with everything that's in your head. But realize one thing, it may be true that whatever is in your head may not be from you. I used to love the idea of the dream catchers that Native Americans used to have, Native North Americans. And I thought of mind catchers. Oh, that sounds really rather silly. But nonetheless, silly or not, it was real. If you have that experience, then you can call it real. If you don't, you would not call it real. You would lean on the biases that you already have and reflect in relationship to those biases. That is not negative. That is what we all do. Just want to be sure in this other one if I left anything out. Can you clarify how will I know when my reality is real and not one driven by the personality? Oh boy, I have a few minutes left. Let me see. Yeah. Our reality is always changing. It's something we don't want to think about too much, but if you are internally growing or externally growing, your reality is changing. That which you consider things with is shifting. If you read a good book on something psychological, for example, and the book is relating to something similar, not the same, but similar to part of the life that you've lived, and a different way of engaging with it occurs coming out of the author's pen, or in these days, computer. You never thought of that before. How silly. I should have thought of that before. Why? It's not through your experience. It's through the expression of this author's imagination or life. Here's another option. There is a reality in that option. A reality. A little bit different than yours. But there's nothing wrong with that. Tie the two of them together and see if that will affect or shift or change a little bit how you're thinking. Absolutely okay to have that happen. We engage with life until we don't. Things touch us until they can't. And we continue to take in and attempt to understand, perhaps, or defend against understanding until we can't any longer perform that particular act related to how your biases have made you. There's no negation in this. It's you working through you and learning and attempting to learn more the best you can. It's okay to learn from others. And it's really okay to learn from yourself. Keeping in mind that tomorrow you may be different than you are today. The personality is a part of, and strangely enough, ultimately, a tremendous engager with higher states, ultimately, where higher states can come in and operate through that being, prepared, of course, prior to that moment, little by little, so it wouldn't be freaked out by some tremendous happening. And ideas would be sometimes very much, but sometimes slightly different than how you used to think in your own mind. And you begin to watch those ideas and wonder about them and see if they make some sense to you. Your personality is still a part of it. And you're beginning to understand that there's more in the universe than what we have been led to believe. And led to think must truly be so, because that's where we are in these initial stages. And when I say initial stages, I mean huge curve of a stage. This is huge, a big stage. Second stage, huge, but overlapping. Form is being shifted. The form is being helped to broaden. And other forms don't want to do that, because yet their love is profoundly strong for how they were. I'm sure that will sound familiar to most of us. In places where it's very difficult to let ourselves be okay with understanding differently than we constructed during our early years, even though we will never lose that construction. We can understand through that construction all others. And as they work their way through a deeper understanding of life, hopefully we can broaden past the selfishness that we insist is so valuable for us to maintain and recreate history as it has been recreated before. Starting to learn from it and realize we're subject to those pitfalls that are alive in all of us, relating to not only our personal defense, but what we believe is valuable to us. Perhaps that can be broadened too. Thank you very much, Christina, for those two questions. I hope I did them enough justice to make some sense. And we'll see you on Saturday. Good night, everybody. We're going to do a meditation now. And we'll just move the computer over. Now we'll just begin to do the balancing and grounding. Have a good evening. Take care.